What's up, guys? Ben here, bringing you another video today. This one's about the Challengers Elite Stage 2 playoffs just completed in both North America and in Europe. We crowned champions in both regions. Let's talk about the winners, the losers, the teams and players that won, and really some people to look out for as most of these teams head to Arlington, Texas for the Major 3 Challengers Open that will start competition next Friday. All right, let's start in North America. Taking a look at the rosters, these are the 8 teams that in Group A and B. Group B made it to the playoffs. I think there are 2 notable teams missing from this list. Boston Academy did not make it to the playoffs. I really don't know what this Boston Academy team is really trying to do. Like, is it just a vehicle to have people like Doug on the franchise and have a team around him? Because they just really haven't done anything this year. And I'm not trying to be harsh at org, because I think they've done a good job with the pro team project. Obviously, Beans was on the Challengers team and he's now been promoted. But I do think players like Kremp, who I think are very, very good, and not being put in the best of situations. So I'm very curious what long-term Boston Academy do, because they've just been a non-factor pretty much in Challengers all year. Another team that also didn't make it to the bracket at all in Challengers was Parasite's team. Also struggled just like Boston Academy. I know that Chris now is taking a step back from Challengers, but Chris, I think, was a victim of a lot of Challengers roster mania and just having players getting picked up or other players getting picked up and new teams forming and just being on the outside of it. So tough bounce for him. But if you take a look at the 8 teams that made it, I mean, it's pretty much a who's who of who is sort of stalling out in North American Challengers these days. Let's talk about some placings on here, some winners and some losers. I think in terms of people that probably could have played a little bit better, Rocker Academy unfortunately got dead last in this bracket. They got top 8. They got double rounded by the eventual champions, and as well as a team that made it to top 4. And we'll get to that in a second. Just not a good showing for Godorex and Pander and the boys. But as we head towards land, these guys are usually good for a good placing at Arlington. So I'll be on the lookout for that. And it also kind of ties into some instability on the Rocker roster. I think maybe 1 or 2 of these players, people like Real and Fame, or even Godorex and Pander, may have an opportunity if they play well next weekend and maybe get in the mix of Rocker. Let's be honest, there's an opportunity where Rocker get kind of dead last in the major bracket and think about making a change on their pro team. So one to watch out for there. LAG Academy, dealing with all sorts of org stuff, got top 6. I don't think that's too bad. They did lose, get 3-0 by Team War in the bracket, and they made a little bit of a decent run, but overall probably wanted a better showing there. Another team that got probably a kind of maybe on the line, I think, just like LAG Academy, when we got top 6, I think obviously doesn't feel great, but I don't think it's still worst placing of all time. Team War beat LAG Academy 3-0, lost to Convoy Gaming, and that's Gunless Persini Classic, Dylan Rex, and they got second. We'll get to them in a sec. And then they also lost to Pro MR's team, who actually, if you don't know them, and we'll scroll up and take a look, this is Smog Alpha team with Hamza Frosty, Leia, Gusify, and Pro MR. These guys have been pretty good in Challengers this year. They're not big names. Hamza is probably the name that people probably know most, but these guys have been solid NA Challengers team for a while, and they made actually a good run in top 4 this event. So Team War probably could have placed a little bit better. So let's talk about the 2 teams I think that ended up kind of making it all the way towards the end, or the 3 teams rather. To be fair, I think the first one is Hyped Esports. This is Trey Zero's team, and if we scroll up here, this is with him, Thanks, Darkside, and Ezreal. I think for Trey, you go ahead and get top 3, first elite competition now in Challengers. I think that's a pretty good showing for him. And then Convoy Gaming, a bit of a fun journey for them. Had a good winners run. And sort of grinded out a second place in this tournament. Again, that's the Gunless Pristini, Dylan Rex, and Classic team. I think Dylan Rex has been playing amazing. Preston and Classic have been really good. Bro fillers. I also think that Gunless is also starting to get in the box where, and I think it's been like this maybe for a month or so, where he really should be getting a look at by the pro teams. He's playing good at this level. I think there are a number of teams, especially at the AR side on the pro teams, be worth taking a look at him. It's not just obviously the slang and decision making when you watch him. There's overall awareness. It's the leadership and all the other stuff that come with him. And then I think finally we got to talk about the Destiny Gaming guys. What a run for them. It pretty much did not lose this entire stage in the elitist in the bracket side. And just a refresher, this is the Day Patty team with Johnny, Prolute, and Yuli. Yuli obviously coming over and all of his teammates getting picked up. So he was kind of unlucky in this situation, but he absolutely fried in this bracket. And I still believe that Yuli is another player who should be given a look at by CDL Pro teams. I think really this whole roster is pretty good. I mean, Dave's kind of bounced between this and the pro level for a while. Johnny had a chance last year on Vegas and probably is starting to get back in that box. And obviously we just talked about Yuli as well. You know, I think he's got a bad bounce. And probably an opportunity to join Florida. I think he was one of the names that was being thrown around as traveling. It just didn't, I think, work out. And obviously we should show some love to Prolute, who is just on Vegas and, you know, unfortunately to give away his spot. I think Byron's solid, and we'll see if he gets another shot at the pro level. Anyway, that is NA Challengers. I think you're going to see a lot of these teams there or thereabouts for the upcoming event next week. I don't know if there's going to be any major roster changes. There might be a couple, you know, as things ended last night. I'm recording this the morning after, so never really know. And roster look, I think, is on Monday for the bracket, so we'll see if there's any shuffles here, and also the teams that did not qualify for their Challengers Elite or didn't make it out of the group stage. All right, next up we have the European region, and these are the 8 teams that went ahead and made it to the bracket. I think for me, looking at sort of how the group stage played out, I think the one team I think that probably is missing from this list is Team Falcons. That's the Saudi Arabian team combo with PAC, and that's the team that Luti coaches. They had a really tough group stage, weren't able to make it on the last day, and we're just outside the top 8. A disappointing showing for them. A team that's still sort of learning now. They've moved to Europe this year. I'm curious to see how they progress, but unfortunately did not partake in the playoffs, and we'll have to qualify back for stage 3 via online competition after this major. All right, let's start with like 1 or 2 teams I think that will probably be a little bit unhappy with their placing. And the first one I think is probably the Originals, and this is the team with Gizmo, with Lucky, with Furious, and they picked up Henry prior to this competition. And you know, top 4 isn't that bad, but in Europe, I think this is a team that you're probably getting 3rd or 2nd, and they obviously lost to the Spanish boys, and we'll get to them in a second. But, you know, probably a little bit disappointing with that placing. I know this is a team that's had a number of roster changes over the last few months. It's not the original team they started the year with, but I'm looking for a better showing from these guys in the future. I think another team that's probably a little bit disappointed is Team Notorious. And this is the Eric Boom Maple Weeman Metal team that's been pretty solid so far in EU Challengers, not at the top tier of teams. They've been in that top 4 range, and you know, they just kind of had a situation where they won their first matchup, lost to the eventual champions, then lost to the Spanish team, and them getting top 6 I think is really disappointing for them. They should probably place a little bit better than that. But I think, you know, the key thing here as we sort of talk about sort of where Europe is evolving is I thought it was a pretty kind of top heavy region prior to, you know, this sort of major elite cycle, right? I thought it was okay. Top 2 teams were the X Elevate team, and then you had sort of the Cody Gakpo Originals, whatever they keep calling themselves, team, and I know they were sort of like the second best team, and then the tier below you had a Wobble Bobs, you had like Sukri and Super's team, and that was kind of how things had settled for a while in the beginning of the year. But it seems like now, and again, this online, you never really know, but it seems like things are starting to sort of merge closer together in this region, which is good to see a lot of competition. So let's talk about the top 3 placings and kind of where we go from there with those teams. I think in 3rd, a big surprise is the X Elevate squad getting 3rd as opposed to making it to grand finals. And that's obviously Denza, Vortex, Journey, and Harry. And this is a really good squad. They've been dominant in Europe. They've been really good in international lands. But once again, running theme here, they lost to Wobble Bobs, and then they lost in a close one to Super and Sukri's team. So they probably felt like they could have made it to grand finals. Obviously went last map, but this is a good land team, so I'm excited to see how they do next week if they're going to Arlington. And then your runners up, we've mentioned them a lot so far. That's the team from Spain. You know, there's a lot to talk about with this squad. I think they've been slowly getting better over the course of the year. It is their best placing so far of the season. So excited to see the progression on this team. I think the key thing when I talk about Spanish players, you got to kind of talk about the London CDL spot, right? This is now owned by KOI as of the off season. You know, it's basically a Spanish organization with some other funding. And I think kind of in the community, the question is, okay, you know, are they going to keep the team in London after the season? Are they going to kind of rebrand it and kind of merge more with eBuy's sort of other properties? A strong Spanish team might make the argument that maybe they might do the rebrand and they might try and fill the Spanish squad. So the development of players like Super and Rencor and Yako and Sukri and people like Juan, aka Journey, Lucky, like it's very, you know, you're getting to a point where you might actually be able to start the year with either a strong Spanish squad if you're going to go down that route next season, or sort of a mixed team because a bunch of those players speak English. So just one to watch with these Spanish players in general as to what happens with the London team in general as well. I do think if London has sort of stay in London, they've been mostly focusing on UK players. They want to keep the EU focused. They probably need to start opening and thinking about some of these players from places like Spain. But to talk about other places of Europe and a team that ended up actually just being completely dominant in this winners bracket, they did not drop a single map. If you see this, look at this bracket. They did not drop a single map in the bracket for this event, which is crazy. And that's Owaba Bob's, Izzy, ABUZAH, Brezzy, Cobra, Lynn's team. This sort of the mixed Belgian-French squad. They all played insane in this bracket. All of them were disgusting. The player we've talked about a lot on my channel is ABUZAH, and his stats were wild. I saw a tweet last night about it. Just finally good to see this Owaba teams grab a trophy, grab this elite competition, and I'm hoping that they can parlay this into being really good at LAN. That's kind of the last thing sort of missing for them. They've been solid online. They've had some decent placings. This is obviously sort of the first major trophy they have because, you know, cups are cups. But so far at LAN this year, their best placing was 4th at Raleigh. They got top 6 at Boston. I want to see these guys make it kind of deep on a Sunday at these LANs because we haven't quite seen it just yet. I think really the best placing European team so far this year has been sort of that Elevate squad. So let's see if they can really crack it into a grand finals on LAN. And I think that would give a lot of credence to sort of my thoughts of ABUZAH's Nasty. Really looking for a team to take him on as a project. You know, I know the org owner of the team is trying to help him with visa stuff, but even then, like, you know, even if they start the visa process, you might have to pick him up and, you know, modify the petition to say, hey, now he's running this team and all that. So curious to see his future, but excited to see that Owaba Bobs was the one that took it in this stage of the elite. Yeah, that's it in both regions. Obviously, this competition will take a little bit of a pause as people go to LAN. We'll have a couple of weeks off. There's going to be another series of online qualifiers. The way that the Challengers Elite works is there's 12 teams, 8 make it to the bracket after the group stage, and then the other 4 get relegated, and they've got to basically participate in this big open play-in for those team 4 spots again. So we'll do another video once the field is complete for the stage 3 of Challengers Elite, and I think that competition kicks off week 1 of the Major 4 qualifier. So it'll be about like 3 or 4 weeks. So be on the lookout for that. As always, guys, let me know in the comments what you think of this video. I think there's a lot of exciting players and challengers still. I know some people come on the flank and like streams and said that they think like talent's a little bit tapped out in challengers right now. I don't know if I really agree with that. I think there's a lot of exciting prospects, both in NA, but I do think as well in EU in particular, there are a number of really good quality players I think that are worth a shot. It's just a question of, again, when we talk about Europe, they don't have a P1 visa already. Getting over that hurdle just kind of adds a delay in picking people up. And so I think that's why those players get overlooked. So I love for one of these orgs kind of take one of those players as a project. Like, if you enjoyed the video, subscribe for more. We've got matches coming up this weekend. I'm excited for that. As always, guys, we'll also see you on the next video. Enjoy.